Hello and welcome to Healthy Seminars. I'm your host, moderator, Lauren Brown. I'm a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine in Vancouver, British Columbia. It's called AcuBalance Wellness Center in Vancouver, BC. Today we have our speaker is Chen Yen. Her background is a pharmacist turned entrepreneur, and she helps health professionals have awesome, successful practices so you can do what you love, which is help people heal. And so rather than trying to figure out the entrepreneurial side of it, she helps you so people can learn about you and understand the benefits with integrity so you can get people into your clinic that need you and get to benefit from your services. And our topic today is basically reopening and attracting patients now and post-COVID-19. So we're recording this during, and we're still in the pandemic, but places are starting to open up, and actually states in the States anyhow, they're starting to threaten to close down again. And so it's a challenging time. And how are you going to maneuver this? How do you communicate to patients? How do you keep your practice going and be of service to your patients? How do you adapt and pivot? And these are a lot of questions we have, and that's what we're going to get Chen Yen to share. Before we do that, I just want to share a few things with you guys on Healthy Seminars, just so you're aware of what we're doing and so you can find things easier. So I'm just going to bring up our talk today. So when we do these free lectures like today, they're going to stay up on Healthy Seminars for 48 hours for you to watch. And there's a reason behind that. And that reason is, back in early March or mid-March, not early March, mid-March 2020, when we went into isolation and people were doing physical distancing, not just social distancing, but physical distancing and social isolation, it became apparent that this was going to be hard on ourselves on a physical and emotional level. And we wanted to do something about community for you guys. Community, unity equals immunity. And so although we had to do physical distancing, we wanted to be doing social innovation. And so we started putting together a series of lectures, and we started now having our web cameras on so we get to see each other. And often at the end of the lecture, we'll turn on our mics so we can connect with each other. And it's all about creating community. And we continue to do this, just not at the same frequency of courses. We were putting on a lot, almost daily, sometimes twice a day. So when you look at our categories, if you go to healthyseminars.com/resources, or just go to resources from any of the pages on Healthy, it'll send you to our calendar and let you know what's going on. And so you can see, here's what's going on here. We got Chen today speaking on June 25th, and we got other stuff happening and have happened. And if you want to see Chen's course, for example, you could go to the resource page, see her June 25th, and you can come to this, and this is where you're going to find her replay on her page, which you can get to from the calendar on the resources page. Now, our intention back in March and still today in late June was we wanted to create community. We want you to be at the live webinar, and we want you to watch the content. And we had a policy where our live content, we did a lot of free content. For a long time we've been doing this, but it only stays up for 48 hours, and then we archive it. And the reason being is we want you to watch it, and we want you to be here for community. Now, during COVID, after people started coming back out of isolation, we started to open up the timing. We kept it longer. People begged, they asked, please let me have these longer. I want more access. And what we noticed, because we kind of predicted, if it's free and unlimited to watch, then with the best intentions, it gets sat on your shelf and it never gets watched. And we've seen this with our content as well. So we're going back to our old policy, our old true policy, that there's lots of free stuff on the internet, and there's lots of lifetime access to free stuff on the internet. So that stuff you can shelve because you have the rest of your life to watch it. But here at Healthy Seminars, the free content, you got 48 hours. So either you come and join us live, which is what we really want because we want that community. And the second goal is we really want the content to be watched. We're putting this out for your benefit. You have 48 hours. I just wanted to make that clear. And I wanted to give you a big push for July. We've already started planning stuff for July and more is to come. So do check out. We got some free stuff happening still. On July 7th, we have a course on PCOS, a 1-hour lecture from a physician who also has his master's in nutrition. And then on July 9th, we're starting this new webinar series called What I Wish I Included in My Book. And so we're going to have different speakers share ideas and answer questions, because now that the book's published and years have gone by, based on our questions that we give them, they realize, oh, I wish I included this, or they come across new information. And it's easy to do that in a webinar, but it's hard to republish a book every time you have new information. So Deborah Betts will be on July 9th. And as you can see, we have lots of CE-approved courses as well coming up in July and August. So I just wanted to let you know about that so you can attend that. Please, Chen, bring up your PowerPoint. I want to remind you guys here during this live webinar, in the chat room, we want to hear from you. We want your questions. So do post any questions you have in the chat room for Chen, and we'll moderate those questions for her on your behalf. You can also raise your hand at the end when she's doing some Q&A, and we can give you a mic right so you can actually talk to her. Again, that's part of our community that we're looking to do, create that community unity. One last thing before Chen brings up her PowerPoint is just to let you know that this is for educational purposes only. If there's any medical information here that could be perceived as medical information, please note that it's only for educational purposes only. If you do have a medical condition, this is not to be interpreted as medical advice, and you need to seek out a healthcare provider. This is for educational purposes only. Chen, please bring up your PowerPoint. And you got your moderators here in the background. I'm looking forward to hearing what you say. And then at the end, we'll have some questions. And if people, I'll share what we've been doing at our clinic in Vancouver and AccuBalance. And I'm looking forward to learning from you. And I'm looking forward to the questions from my community here. So it's all yours.
So are you at a place where you are now open and it's been a bit slow? And people are coming back, but how do you actually attract new ones? I'm curious for you, when did you reopen? And what's it been like? Go ahead and type in the chat. Feel free to write down in the chat when you reopen and what have you noticed, or where you're located, and what have you noticed in reopening? And so some of you may also be thinking more short term in terms of getting the practice all situated, having the environment conducive to treating patients right now and seeing patients in a good flow right now. But have you actually sat down and thought about the longer impact of all this and how this will impact your business, not just for the upcoming few months, but perhaps even longer term? And what could that look like for you? How to adapt to that? Or things like, I've been hearing questions like, should I lower my fees? How many of you have been wondering that even too? So what we're going to be getting into will help you with getting busier. And then if you are, and even if because things are still a bit unpredictable, for example, could this come back in the fall? Could you actually be thinking about even another stream of income now so that you're prepared in advance, even for the fall, to still be helping people in a different way than just seeing patients in person? So I'm seeing those of you type in the chat, some of you not yet open. Leslie says we'll reopen in July, and Kathleen says, hi from New Jersey, not open yet. And Deborah says reopen 1st of May in Florida, 50% now. Jones is not yet. Many other practitioners in my area over the past 3 weeks, one client at a time. Okay, so some of you are actually not open, and some of you slowly reopened a couple weeks ago, like Cindy, and Joy's is pretty busy. Mary Claire's busy around 70%. Okay, so a range of what you're experiencing right now then. So now as far as some of the things we're going to be getting into, during these COVID-19 times, we've been working with our clients, and some of them have been busier during COVID-19 times, partly because of what we put in place beforehand. But someone like Cheng, she actually had her busiest months even during COVID. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that have been working for our clients. Or for example, Jaquel, she actually has more of an integrative clinic, and she was busy because of the things that we put in place beforehand, and then also during, and what were those things that we paid attention to. Brandy uses a different story. She had a practice for over 10 years, and actually more like over 15 years, but she was working for a cancer treatment center, and they decided to wrap up acupuncture in the cancer treatment center. So she found herself having to go out on her own again, which she did way back when initially had her own practice. But then now, she just found herself in this place. This is before COVID. So what a surprise. And then shortly after that, the COVID thing happened. So having to really adapt quickly. And so I'll be sharing with you some of those things that we put in place, like from both a bigger picture perspective, but also some key things that you could use practically in your practice even this week that can bring in more patients. And as we get into this, for some of you who might be new to me, you might be wondering, who is this person? So I'm a pharmacist who started out on Native American reservations and had really enjoyed the travel, the adventure of getting to know the different tribes and the cultures. But after a while, I started feeling really dissatisfied. I would go in the pharmacy. I remember this woman, I gave her Prozac medication, and I felt really angry not at her, but at what our healthcare system was putting in front of her, as if that were the only option and I was endorsing it. The truth was, I was always very much into holistic kinds of things, and growing up in a family where we hardly took any medications. Whenever we were sick, my mom might open up the cabinet, pull out some Chinese herbs, and that was the extent of what we'd get. Whereas I'd see these kids come in, they would get immunization shots and be given a bag, they would be given Tylenol and some other medications, even if they weren't hurting anymore. And then people coming in with leaving with bagfuls of medications, 10 to 20 medications is just no big deal, isn't just an everyday occurrence. And that felt really, I got jaded. And have you ever been in a place in your life where you weren't really happy with what was going on, but you didn't know what to do next? Well, that was what was happening to me. And without having a better sense of what to do next, one thing I did know was I had to get out of there. And then another thing was that I noticed other pharmacists around me, and many were also unhappy. They were in government jobs, counting down towards retirement, having these things on their computer screens, 15 days, 2 years. I thought, oh my goodness, 15 years, 2 days, and thought that was not a way to live. So fast forward 5 years, I'd started and grown a successful recruiting business to 7 figures. And I used to always think that, okay, if I just make more money, then I can, I'll do what I really care about outside of work. But it didn't happen that way for me. And I mean, what ended up happening was I went through this phase of soul searching, and then finally came out the other side and realized that I needed to stop pretending that it was okay. I was primarily selling my soul for people to be on drugs, when I had a secret life in a way, where little things like I don't own a cell phone. so that's what led me to help acupuncturists and other practitioners, holistic health practitioners, with growing their practices in a way that feels good. And because many times you went into school to help people, not necessarily run a business. And yet so many people need to know about what you do. And it's not going to be the insurance company, it's not going to be drug companies, it's not going to be the government changing things. It really starts with you being able to get the word out about what people can have options of. And that's when things will really change. And so as far as what you're going to be learning today comes from, some of the things that I'll share with you are some low-hanging fruit to book more patients. We're also going to be getting into my predictions of how COVID-19 can likely affect your practice, short-term and long-term, and then specific marketing strategies working in this climate. We're also going to be getting into some critical keys to bring in more patients? What are the 5 critical keys? Whether you are wanting to see more patients in person or telehealth, because how many of you would have actually started seeing people through telehealth wise, and you kind of like that? You might even be thinking, maybe I'll just do this more. Go ahead and type in the chat, or maybe those of you who just prefer seeing patients in person, type in the chat too. That way, I get a better sense of that. We're also going to be getting into more of the strategic planning kinds of things, and then answering your question about, for example, should you lower your fees? So the thing about this is that just because you're open, it doesn't mean that people come in, right? So what are some low-hanging fruit? Because people might either be concerned about coming into the practice, or they just aren't thinking about it. And so part of it is about bringing that awareness to them that you are open. And so what can you do with that? So there are a couple of quick things, low-hanging fruit, that you could do to stay connected with your patients and also inspire them to come in, if it makes sense for them to come in to get the help they need. So for example, encouraging existing patients to come in through emailing them or texting them or through social media. And so as far as, but then you might be thinking, okay, well, I don't really have the time to do things like this. I don't also know what I should send people. I don't want to be bugging people too much. Have you been feeling that? So what can you do? So if you don't have the time, just look at creating one thing, and then you can tweak it for different mediums, whether it's email or text or social media. So here are a couple things that you could do already right away with this. First thing is we could look at creating an email that might be something personal about your excitement about reopening. And maybe some of you have already sent something out, but I want to bring up a couple things here that you could still incorporate perhaps in a future email differently, with a different kind of an angle or what you're talking about with your correspondence with your community. So the protective measures that you're taking, also the protective measures that you're taking at the clinics, so that people feel more comfortable with coming in. And then the other thing to bring up is, why is it important to come in, including why is it more important, more so now than ever? So I want you to think about what are the different either health issues that, because people are experiencing now, or maybe are things of concern that if they were to have those health issues and they were to get COVID, that it would put them at higher risk for mortality. What are those things, and what could you bring up about how it could be important to take care of their health with those things? Or what's your philosophy? So bring those things up. And then look at addressing what some of the most common concerns people are having about coming in. So I'd like for you to type in the chat, what are some of the most common concerns you've been hearing people have about coming in? Go ahead and type in the chat. I'm curious. So for example, some of the things that I've heard from my clients when we were doing more of a share with this the other week was, will there be other people in the treatment room or waiting area, or I'm afraid of risking contamination, or any exposure is risky, or I'm feeling kind of nervous about your plan, but I don't have a good reason. I know that you're doing the right things, or finance related kinds of concerns. Like, I haven't been working for almost 3 months, so I can't come in right now. Or I've been waiting to come in. This is not so much a concern, but maybe it's something they bring up. I've been waiting to come in because I assume you weren't open. Or I'm in a high risk group that I was told not to leave the house. So what are some things? Okay, so yeah, so Deborah says, still afraid to leave the house. Pamela says, compromised immunity. And then MK says, COVID precautions. And Joy says, not so much concerns about coming in. Some people can't wear, and Pamela says, some people can't wear masks. Okay. Okay, and I know some of you also posted, like Tracy, most clients are online, and Laurel is enjoying doing herbal medicine with telehealth, so fantastic. So yeah, so as far as, by the way, for those of you who have patients who have concerns because they have compromised conditions, then is there anything that you can do with that for them telehealth wise, right? But in terms of your email, addressing some of the most common kinds of concerns, and as far as, for example, if there are studies that show that if you were to help support them with whatever their health issue is, or their gut issue or immunity that could be beneficial to them. So bring up different things that can answer their concerns. And then finally, at the end of the email, put a call to action. So but this is something that many of you probably have done at some point in time, or even if you're letting people know about reopening, you might have said something like book an appointment. And at the same time, if you are sending something else out, which you could totally do even if you've sent one out before, or if you haven't sent one out yet, then how can you always think about how can we end with something that would lead people to take a next step with it, whatever that is with you, because studies have always shown this. For example, sometimes I'm kind of shy about this. Sometimes when I share tips with my community, I might think, I'll just leave it at this and some thoughts. And of course, that's great, for certain times, but I always notice a difference when I actually do put a specific call to action at the end versus not. And so then I also think about this. I was at an airport. This is like half a year ago or so, and I remember walking through. This is in Newark, and they have this new area for food and done up really nicely. And there's this big sign of all the different restaurants right there. There's many right there, maybe about 10, all in this food court kind of area. But there's this one sign that said, "Come here," or something like that. And I saw myself walking over there, and I thought, oh, yes, this call to action thing works, right? So anyways, what are some possible call to actions you can put in your emails, or whether you could adapt this for text or social media too? Book your such and such now about that health issue you've been putting off getting checked out, or book your such and such now about the health issue you've been ignoring because you haven't had the time. Another possibility of call to action could be referencing how you have your closing. For example, book your such and such now about that health issue you haven't been able to take care of now because we've been closed. Or schedule your appointment for your such and such. Take care of yourself by putting yourself first today. And it's especially important to take care of your health during these times. Or it might be something like book your such and such appointment now and get yourself first in line for first choice of appointments as we reopen. Right? So notice how there are different ways of bringing this up. So it's not just, book and schedule an appointment, that's it. Or it's not just book and then something else and where you feel like, I'm not sure what to say because I don't want to be pushy. So what about text? What are some other possibilities? Text can be a great way to reach people because think about email. How many of you have so many emails that you don't look at? Right. So I put the chat. Yeah, so that's you, right? And the texting, though, many people see their texts. So, but what can you actually send out text-wise that doesn't look like some mass text? Because have you ever gotten those texts that just look like sent to so many people, and you just think, you just don't look at it, right? So, for example, what can you send by text? You can send something like, "I've been thinking about you, excited to share that we're open. How are you?" Or it could just be, it could be something that engages whoever it is, and then just leave it at that. And then if they don't respond, or if you want to do a second one, then text them and say, "It's time for tune-up. It's time to book an appointment," or something like, "It's time to book an appointment. I have a few slots left this week," and then give them a couple of time slots. Text me back if you or someone you had wanted to refer wants to take one of those spots. This is something that one of my clients did during COVID-19 when she was still open during that time, and she would have cancellations in her schedule, and then she would send this out, and then it would fill up her schedule. So this worked really well. And another thing I want you to notice about this text too, is it says, "Text me back if you or someone you had wanted to refer," right? Because how many of you would love to have more referrals? And have you ever had people who have also referred, but that person hasn't actually come in yet? Well, many times referrals, even if someone tells someone else about you, it might take more than once for them to hear about it before they actually come in. Because have you ever experienced even going to, where your friend tells you about this great restaurant? Do you just go and go there right away? Or maybe you might hear about it somewhere else. You might see it somewhere else, and then you finally go, right? Same thing with this as well. So this is just another avenue to also remind your patient that they can refer if they chose to. And this, even though it's in a text script here, you could use it whether it's an email or you could use it in social media. And I'm curious, just take a moment here and look in the chat too. And I'm curious, how many of you do send emails or texts or do post things on social media for your patients as a way of connecting? Feel free to type in the chat, like which ones of those mediums you tend to use. Let's see here. So, okay, so people aren't writing the trains yet. Okay. Pamela says, did a survey and most people said their greatest fears were for their family, not themselves. Interesting idea from Pearls. Okay, yeah, yeah. So then, and then look, email newsletters. Laurel says emails and Facebook. Cindy sends texts and Sharon says email campaigns, but large percentage don't get open. Okay, so Sharon, so then one possibility is by reaching them in a different way, like the texting. And even though we haven't talked about this yet, also calling. How many of you have actually personally connected and reached out to your previous patients? Go ahead and type in the chat, because that is also another avenue, especially if you're feeling like you're slow. And it's always, having a practice and being successful in practice is also about your relationships with people and how can you stay connected that way. And even if it's not time for them to come in or, just staying connected. Good. So some of you are calling. So fantastic. What about social media? What can you do with social media? So here are some ideas for you for social media. It could be just something that reminds people, again, right, to book an appointment. So notice there are two things that can work well in social media if you're going to be posting on social media. So one is capture attention. Because how many times do you scroll through things and you don't even stop to look at it, right? So the first thing is something that will catch your attention to stop and look at it. And when you look at this image, does this make you stop and look at it? It might more compared to other ones, right? Because it almost looks like it's a screenshot from a phone. And then another is that it's very, very bright in color and also different in color. And then the other thing is the call to action. Notice that there are a couple of ways of doing the call to action, including the call or texting thing, and then the website link here. Here's another very simple thing too that many of you might not have done yet. And if you have, perfect. If you haven't, then this is an area of opportunity for you. Do you actually just have this on your page for your Facebook page and have this up on the banner side of things that you offer, whether it's you're offering virtual visits still, or you're open now, or you're accepting new patients, just to remind people of that. For example, one of my clients who's getting calls from Facebook, with what I've been helping her with, this is one of the things that she has up there. So, and when she changed the cover to include that, it helped boost the number of calls she was getting from Facebook. So, and then even though there's not an image showing you this, but also on your website. So on your home page, do you have some notification about how you are reopened? One way to do this is by having a banner thing on the very top it's called a hello banner, and in a different color, or maybe at the very, very bottom, but in a more bright color, just to bring people's attention to it that you are open. Or if it's just some kind of text or image on your homepage, that can be good as well. So as far as what else might you need is, and also Sharon says, like, insight on engaging local people on social media, and Instagram, Facebook followers are from all over, and so haven't done a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then, one thing that you can do is to make it, well, for one, making it clear when you do post, if you're posting organically in Facebook, or even if you're posting ads too, but mentioning what city and state you're from in your posts, and And then the other thing in terms of engaging local people, it depends on what you want to do in terms of if you do want to run ads and things like that. There are ways to target people who are more in your local area. The other possibility is to have to use social media more for also you're connecting with your existing patients, and then have them share with their friends, like in your call to action for social media, to mention things like share this with a friend of yours, or so even just that simple thing of thinking about saying that, share it. For example, sometimes I forget myself when I post on social media. I don't think about those things, but I remember seeing other people say something about sharing, and then I see myself clicking the button and sharing, right? So just simple things like that. And then we'll talk a little bit more about what are some of the strategies that are working also with, for example, Facebook to be getting patients. We'll talk about that later today as well. So what else you need would be staying connected regularly. Do you consistently stay in touch? Because in addition to just saying, "Hey, we're open now," and then here book here and that kind of thing, it's also helpful to continuously be educating your patients. So sometimes we might forget, or because we're clinicians and we understand what people like. We understand all these clinical things, and it's easy for us to think that it's just second nature. Everybody knows this kind of stuff. That, oh yes, this can help with this, or this would be beneficial to do this, and it could be easy to forget that a lot of people don't know these things, and then part of the reason why people might not be booking or coming in is because they don't really understand how it could help them. Even if they've been your patients, they might not even realize, because has this ever happened to you before, that they come to you for one thing, but they don't realize that you could help them with other things. So think about how you can continuously stay connected with your patient base or people on your list or people in your community, with educating them on different health kinds of topics and issues and challenges, and do you actually have a system for this, or is this just kind of haphazard? Do you just kind of do something here because you feel like it, and then, or you think, oh, I'm kind of slow right now, I need to go do something with this, or do you actually have a system with this, right? And the other thing that can be helpful for you to think about are some simple things as you're open as well too, is simple things like, what does your clinic look like? Have you done an inventory more of how is your, what's on the walls? Right? Not just inventory of your herbs and that kind of thing, not just inventory of your supplies, but have you actually taken a moment, strategically thought about what is in my surroundings in my office and my clinic? Because one of the most powerful things that we don't usually think about is what people visually see and how that impacts how they're understanding things. And because have you ever sat in a doctor's office before, where maybe the doctor had to leave for a few moments, and then you just sat there and you looked around and you're in that room? Have you ever done that before? And you started maybe even pulling out what's in the plastic racks and started looking at it. You started looking at the posters more on the wall. So every moment, even the person walking in the clinic, or for example, have you ever gone to places where they've actually had, those 5-star review plaques? How many of you have actually had 5-star reviews on Google or Yelp or Healthgrades or Facebook? Go ahead and type in the chat. How many of you have had 4 or 5-star reviews before, right? Yes, I'm saying yes here. Yes, it's here. So then do you actually have, because did you know you can actually get things like that? You can actually purchase things like that, where if you do have those 5-star reviews, like online, you could actually purchase those plaques and then put it on your office. But have you ever been to an office where they had different awards and things like that? And then there's just that, you just feel differently about the place when you see that, right? You feel like, oh, this is, I came to the right place because this place is credible. So even those subtle things can make a difference in terms of how people see your credibility, how people trust in you. Also, what's in the waiting area. What do you have educational that's in the waiting area? On the coffee table or in plastic racks, or do you even have plastic racks? And so just little things like these to think about that can seem really simple and can be very profound. So, and if you're not letting anyone stay in the waiting room right now, people still walk through the waiting room, right? So what do you have on your walls? Again, it still does make a difference there. Okay, so we've talked about so far some low-hanging fruit to book more patients. And then now let's look at what are some of my predictions about how COVID-19 can affect practices coming up here. So in terms of one of my predictions, it has to do with more of in thinking about the economic impact of things. What do you all think in terms of what direction the economy might go coming up here? What do you all think? Go ahead and type in the chat. I'm curious. So Pamela says south. Okay. What do you all think? Kathleen says not so good for a while. Cindy says slow getting back. Tough times, Laurel says. Joyce says we can stay like this for a while. Darcy says maybe devastating. Lynn says it will come back slowly. Sharon says economics affected my bottom line. Increased costs. Because how many of you have experienced increased costs, right? Because you have to get this PPE thing and then there's this lower numbers and Jones is maybe up and down, but more down. And cases slow for a while. Okay, so what are some of the things that economists are saying about what could be happening here? So, for example, Paul Krugman, who is a Nobel Prize winning economist. So he said this is pretty early on during the whole COVID thing when he said this. He thought that it would be like, do you think it'll be a V recovery? Do you think it'll be a W recovery? Will it be an L-shaped recovery? And what did he say? He thought it would be more like a Nike swoosh recovery was what he said back then, right? But, and more recently, there's been a lot more debate about this in terms of another perspective, for example, being more of a W kind of a recovery. And for example, one of the people that I follow who she became a millionaire in her 30s, and she has one of the most listened to podcasts, and it's called Be Wealthy and Smart. Actually, I would recommend listening to it because there are different things that she talks about. She actually talks about not getting caught up in hype of investing. You know how with whenever the real estate market was going up and everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is so easy to make money in it, and people were jumping into it, right? But she talks about how also sometimes it can be hard to time things perfectly. But what we can look at are billionaires and what they're following, and many times they're following cycles of investing. And if you can take that into consideration and also understand what's happening in the economy too, and then make decisions investing that way, then you can be more successful with it. By the way, why are we getting into this? Because as a business owner, part of also being successful is taking care of yourself financially. And taking care of yourself financially doesn't have to come just in the way of seeing patients. It can also come in the way of how can you make money work for you. But many acupuncturists don't even think about that as much, or some who do don't really know, like, well, what should I look into, and then not lose my shirt, right? Because I don't understand this thing. So it's helpful for you to get educated, right? In fact, actually during these times, people have made some of the most money lately, right? And because they knew what they were doing. One of the most dangerous things you can do is invest and not know what's going on. So, but in case, circling back to this, I was just bringing up that can be helpful for you to also be looking at possibilities of how can you make your money grow too? Because, for example, Warren Buffett, and then there was also this guy who is, he was a money manager for very successful with beating Wall Street for many years, and people look up to him quite a bit. And he was saying, this is he never thought there would be another time like this in his lifetime, as far as a good time, good times by, right? Like in this kind of a situation. But in any case, okay. So the W-shaped recovery is another possibility of what can happen. And, especially with the, why? Because, for example, there was a dip, right? Like this is kind of the dip we saw in March here. But then there's still some uncertainty with reopening. And then there, in fact, there are even more cases of coronavirus in different parts of the country, depending where you live. But then also this thing could come back in the fall too. And then there's some economic impacts of that. So this could also be another possibility. And personally, I'm actually feeling like it's probably going to be more like a W-shaped recovery. And so as far as another prediction about this is that people will probably be more tight with their spending. But then at the same time, people who have money will still have money to spend, because money didn't just totally disappear overnight either. And this was definitely one of a situation where, it was a very unique situation caused by health related kind of things. It's not because people didn't have the capability, to, for example, work, or people didn't have the capability to be successful in their business. It's because of a very unique situation. And so, but there are still people with the money. And just to give you, it's interesting because sometimes we can start to believe things with what people around us are experiencing. And at the same time, who are you hanging around with? Are you hanging around with people who are successful, or are you hanging around with people who say, oh, things are down, everything's down, nobody's paying for anything, right? Because my reality, actually, for example, in working with my clients, I've seen my clients actually have their biggest months even during right now. And so that for me, that's even personal proof of seeing that there are still people out there with money and paying for things. So, and I'm talking about during the thick of the COVID-19, not even now, but I'm talking about, last couple of months too, and even now as well. So, and thinking about this also, if you think about times of recession or times of economic downturns, there are people who made actually the most money during that time as well, right? There were people who had challenges, but there are also people who made the most money. So the reason I bring this up is don't be afraid, right? Because there are still people with money, and it's just a matter of how can you get in front of them, and how can you also, I'll share with you a couple of things that will become even more important now than before. Another prediction I have is that there's going to be more competition with social media and online advertising. I asked you earlier, how many of you are on social media and that kind of thing, and I believe there's going to be more competition happening there. Why? Because just think about all this that happened in the last couple of months. More people were at home. They're checking out things in social media. They also started to be more open to this concept of working from home or helping people through online ways. And there's probably going to be a surge. There's probably going to be a surge of people consuming things online and being interested in things online. And what happens when there's a surge in that too? Well, people who want to get in front of those people who are interested in that will increase as well, right? Like people, for example, some of you might have never thought about this before in terms of, well, how do I work with people online, or maybe offer a telehealth or group programs or online courses? Like you never really went in that direction before, right? But now you might be thinking about those things. So then you're thinking about, well, how can I market to get in front of those people? And same thing, other people are thinking that too. So I believe there's going to be more of a saturation with, in terms of, you can call it more noise or more out there, or more advertising competition online is a prediction that I have as well. So one thing, what can you do that can help you coronavirus proof your practice, right? Because again, this kind of a thing potentially could come back in the fall. This also, even if it doesn't come back in the fall, because of the climate we're in, what are some things to pay attention to? Well, one of the biggest mistakes many acupuncturists make is, and this is even before COVID-19 times, I would say, but especially during these times as well, it becomes even more important, is go straight to, when you want more patients, think, oh, let me get the phone ring, without paying attention to the first two steps. And then wondering, well, how come people aren't coming in? But it seems like I'm doing similar things that other acupuncturists who are successful are doing. Why isn't it working for me? And many times it's because missing the first two steps. And what's the first step, for example, is to look at, well, what is unique about you, and communicate it so people get it. But what do I mean when I talk about uniqueness? Because when we normally think about it, we just think, oh, okay, what do we do that's different? But if you really think about it, when people decide whether or not to work with you, they're making up their mind based on two things. One, if they like you and resonate with you. Two, if they feel you could really help them. You say that's true? So how's that coming across when people don't know you? And just to give you an example of this, I had an acupuncturist client of mine in Phoenix. She had a busy practice in Phoenix, but then when she moved to San Diego, she had a hard time getting new patients. And you might think, well, she just needs more exposure. But that wasn't what we worked on first. The first thing we did was pull out her uniqueness factor. She put it up on her website, and she started getting calls from people. And one of the first calls was from this woman who said, I saw your website and I just knew I had to work with you. So when this is clear, then regardless of what you're doing for marketing, it becomes easier, right? So the uniqueness factor comprises of several things, but let me just share with you one thing that you can think of right away that can, because uniqueness factor isn't just about this with what I'm about to share with you, but it is a combination of factors. But what are some of the implications of this climate? I believe that it's going to be more important for you to be more niched in or have more of a specialty kind of focus of what people know you for. Also working with specific groups of people. For example, if you think about what professions, right? Because remember how we talked about there are going to be people who are unfortunately going to have some tough times financially. There are also going to be people who have the money. And what's a profession, for example, that might be more profession proof, right? If this were to happen again, well, the IT profession has been a good profession to have been in during these times because many of them easily were able to work from home, right? So that is a great profession. I have a client of mine who mainly works with IT professions. It didn't affect her practice at all, right, during this whole time. And she's in the Bay Area. So, and then what about also frontline workers, right? So looking ahead, how can you get in front of whether it's IT people or frontline workers where there are healthcare professionals or just overall more frontline kind of workers who might need your services, or government workers, because even if we were to have another one of these things in terms of unpredictable kind of COVID thing in the fall thing, well, a lot of government workers, they're still getting a paycheck, whether it's teachers, whether it's people who work in different sectors of the government. They still, I mean, one of my friends works for the FDA and she just worked at home this whole time, got a nice paycheck, no big deal, you know. So the also, how can you help and be in front of, for example, people who might be at higher risk if they were actually, if they actually were to get COVID, then they'd be at higher risk for mortality, which is respiratory issues, allergies, or diabetes. So people who might, or cancer, people who it's like, or people who are pregnant, like they still need to take care of their health regardless of what happens, right? So these kinds of challenges and issues that, so then these challenges are issues that you can help people with, and especially during these times. So think, if you do want to look in that direction and think about some of these things. And Joan's right? Like not all people who work from home during COVID, it's no big deal. It's much more challenging to some. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of my acupuncturist clients, when this whole thing first started, he was all really concerned about it because he helps people with sports acupuncture, and he thought there's no way it's such a personal experience, there's no way I could work with people by phone, and he was very afraid and concerned for his practice and his financial well-being too. And then we talked about this, and he ended up doing some things more virtually, incorporating qigong and acupressure and herbs and then actually focused on people who were working from home and experiencing a lot of stress. And so yes, it's not always a no big deal thing, right? Most of us have had to adapt to it in some ways. But the good news is that you're in healthcare, and so what are some things to think about strategically? Are there unexpected leverage points in your practice that you might not have thought about before? Is there going to be more things that are going to be more in demand? For example, some of the things I talked to you about. But one area that you may or may not have thought about too, that I believe could be more in demand or could be a created need, could also be house calls. Have you ever thought about that? Because people may not want to go out as much, but then if you could actually go there, I've had clients, acupuncturist clients of mine who are doing that right now, and it's been very popular, right? And you could still charge a premium for that, so it's worth your while as well. So, which areas is most important to rethink? What's under threat, or what's in terms of in your business? What might be a new opportunity to pursue? Now, what about should you lower your fees? So this is an interesting question. How many of you have been wondering that, or how many of you are thinking, no, I'm not going to lower my fees? Right. So go ahead and type in the chat. Lower your fees. No, and then Sharon says increasing fees a bit next month. Okay. So who else have you thought about lowering your fees, or you're not sure about your fees? Okay. No. Okay. Sliding scale. Okay. So it seems like most of you aren't lowering your fees, or most of you are talking about increasing your fees. So that's good. Right. And, I believe that, and Darcy says increase fees. Yes. So I believe that there's not really much of a need for you to all panic and lower your fees either. Right. Because, but what will become more important though, is the first two steps here. When you can communicate what is, why it is special to go to you. So for people who already know you, they probably have an understanding of that experience, but for new people, they might not, right? So it becomes even more important for this to come across as far as what is your uniqueness factor and how are you exactly communicating it so people get it. So, and then it's interesting because also during these times, many times, as I've observed a lot of acupuncturists experience this COVID thing and it being unexpected. I've also noticed that here's one thing I've noticed is that the people who are successful, quite like even during these times, who are busy, they had solid business grounding foundations even before it. So when this happened, it didn't really rock them as much. Whereas the people who really struggled, it's like the truth is, if you were to really look at it, it was just the leak that was there before in the business was magnified. And if you experience that yourself in terms of you experience some hardship during these times, be honest with yourself. Right? Did you actually have solid business foundations even before this, or did this just really magnify things for you? Right? And so the reason I bring these 5 steps up is that these were 5 principles that were 5 steps that in this in this order is the key to consistency in a practice. Whether you want to be making $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month, $50,000 a month, even $100,000 a month, right? These are still really important, and they still remain to be important even as you're going through these times as well. So have you actually done a 30-day strategic planning? And also what you're, for the rest of the year as well, right? So these are some 8 areas to look at, and whether it's positioning, services or products or pricing or placement, and then, or promotion or operations, what are some key areas of opportunity and also areas that might need to be tweaked? Because the things that worked before with promoting your business might not work so well now, right? If you were doing things in person, if you're doing you were networking in person or events and that kind of thing, that there might not be as much of an opportunity, for example, in groups of people. So how can you adapt to that? So one thing for you to do is to take an inventory of these things, like really sit down and reflect on this. So most people don't do this. Most people just look at this and then, oh yeah, I know. Yeah. Placement. Oh yeah. Pricing. Yeah. Whatever. Or services. But if you were to really sit down and think about each of these things and reflect on how might the course of upcoming months shift what people's needs are, and how can I get in front of them differently? How can I streamline operations even more without it ending up costing me an arm and a leg? And so, write these things down and actually strategically think about these things. One thing I just want to make sure, because we're going to be getting into also your staff, right? These things need to change with staff. So one thing I want to make sure that you have access to, because what we're going to be getting into next is that I'm going to help you with also marketing strategies that are working now. So we're going to talk about some marketing strategies that I'm seeing are working right now in this climate. And let me just make sure, because I did give you some templates there earlier. And as far as the email templates and the texting templates. And I know some of you are furiously writing it down. And if you didn't catch all of it, I just want to make sure you get it. So I'm going to give you access to that. So I'm going to just give you the link to access that if you want to, and you can download it. Also, I'm going to give you access to the, remember how we talked about the frequently asked questions as well that people have in terms of concerns and how to navigate that? Like, I am feeling kind of nervous about this. I don't have a really good reason though, or any exposure is risky. What are some things that you could say to that? And so I'm going to be, let me see here. Let me just pop in the chat. I'm going to give you the link there, and that way you can get it if you want to those downloads there. So, okay. So I'm going to pop this in the chat here for you if you want that. And then we're going to go on to marketing strategies that are working right now. What's number 7 and 8? So let's see here. Let me scroll back here so you can see 7 and 8 was, let's see here, so patient client experience. Do things need to change about the patient client experience, or what people like, whether it's your staff and that kind of thing. So, okay. So then let's have a look at this then. What are some marketing strategies that are working right now? So one strategy is that we talked about earlier already is low-hanging fruit. Another strategy that is overlooked is getting referrals from MDs. So why is it great to be getting referrals from MDs, especially during this time? So medical doctors have thousands of patients in their practices, and they're willing to refer if they actually knew about you and if they actually trusted in what you were doing for your patients. Because imagine if you actually had 3 to 5 referrals a week from even if you had 3 providers sending you 3 referrals a week. What would that do for your practice, right? That would be 9 new patients a week. Even if you had just a third of that, like if you had 3 doctors sending you 1 referral a week, that's still 3 new patients a week. Could you do with an extra 3 new patients a week, right? 3 new patients or 9 new patients a week. So another thing is that when we look at this, so what are some of the things that you might think about as you think about, oh yes, it could be good to get doctor referrals, but right. So go ahead and type in the chat. What's that but for you? Because see, many of their patients could use your help. That's the truth. It was the truth before COVID-19, and it's the truth now also, and will continue to be. So what are some of the things that you might be concerned about, or feeling like, well, I don't know if that's really possible. Okay, so difficulty getting past front desk offices. Pamela says meeting them, getting their trust. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what else? And Joy says already referrals from MD, perfect. So then how can you get more of them, right? So Cindy says can't get their time to educate them. Yes, so the time factor. So, well, there are a couple things in terms of meeting them and gaining their trust. It's part of it is about showing them. So this is from experience of working with medical doctors in different settings. I've worked with medical doctors in hospital setting, outpatient, at the FDA, and at Merck. So I've seen what actually gets them to refer and what doesn't, and give our clients a shortcut to that. So one thing that I would say is really important is to always be looking at how can you educate them on there being a need for it, right? Even, sure, they might already know these kinds of things, even like the graph that I'm showing you here now, right? Like you look at it, you think, oh yeah, well that's I already know kind of that thing, right? But even just showing things like this to them, making it available to them so that they actually get it. And I know this is just a very small part of what you all do, but just sharing this here. So Tracy says, when I started my acupuncture practice, 2 MDs and a chiropractor were totally responsible for building my practice. Yes, right. So you're living proof that this is so true, that this can work. So there is an increasing trend. There's just there are what I was trying to show you with that graph too, is that it's just inevitable that along with this. And did you know there's a physician shortage and predicted? I mean, there are studies done on this, and there's going to be a physician shortage. This is even before the COVID-19 times, right? It was already pretty talked about in their studies on this. And so, so then just naturally, there's going to be more of a need for other providers to be really helping, and patients aren't being helped appropriately sometimes anyway with medications. Would you agree? Right. So, and right now also is, people don't want to go to the hospital as much or the ER as much. And so then, and medical doctors need you, and what if you just had a piece of the pie? So they're so much better than when you get referrals from doctors, and more likely to come in, more likely to stick with care. It's also such an under-tapped source of patients. So let's have a look at this, because what are the challenges? These are some of the challenges that you brought up, like where to start, or maybe you had a good conversation, but no referrals or doctors not giving you time of day. So here are some of the biggest mistakes that I'll say. One is sending a letter. Have you ever done that before? Thought about doing that? How many of you have thought about doing it or have done it before? Type in the chat. So sending out a blanket letter, maybe I've heard of acupuncturists because they've told me, oh yeah, I sent out like 200 letters out in the area. Maybe heard back from like one or something like that, right? But what do you do? What do you do when you get something by mail from someone you don't really know, and you have a pile of things to go through? Maybe you set it aside, or maybe it just goes in the trash, right? Another mistake is expecting referrals from one conversation. It's almost like this. It's almost like feeling like, oh yeah, so I just went on this date, and then will you marry me? It's almost, if I know it's a little dramatic, but if you really think about this, and if you have tried to get referrals before and you've been disappointed and discouraged, this is probably on some level is what is happening, right? Because you have these unrealistic expectations of them sending you referrals already right away when they just met you once or talked to you once. Another mistake is giving up too early and then just thinking, oh, this thing just doesn't work. And then another thing I've seen is that being concerned that they might see you as competition. The truth is that many medical doctors actually are more concerned about outcomes for their patients. They went into it for the right reasons also, just like you have into your profession. It's just that many times they've been trained in ways that just deal with drugs and surgery, but it's not like they went into it to decide, oh, I just want to give my patients drugs and surgery. Like that's not usually how they went into it, you know? So if you can talk to them in such a way that's about how can I help your patients get better outcomes. One hot tip also for you is that there are a lot of medical doctors who have a lot of pride because they have gone through a lot of training, a ton of training. And so there are two things that will really help you. One is really, really showing up with that kind of confidence in your practice in Chinese medicine. So showing up energetically with that confidence, because otherwise they can pick up on it energetically. And the other thing is to, instead of, because, in some situations you might think, well, Chinese medicine can just take care of this, and we could really be more of like primary care physician kind of a thing, right? But if you're going about it with doctors from that kind of a perspective, their pride is going to be hurt a bit too, right? So if you can see them more as if you can approach them more in the sense of how can I support you with your outcomes, and always, in terms of putting them as more of the primary, then you're more likely to get referrals that way. So do you actually have a good plan for getting referrals? So a couple things that I just want to highlight for you that I see as being missing when acupuncturists are trying to get a hold of doctors and or getting in with doctors, but it's not happening, is deciding who to get in with, because not every doctor will be interested in referring, but some will, right? So how do you make your short list with that? And then how do you actually decide what to say, for example, in an initial conversation, so they would actually pay attention to you? And how do you even get to that point of getting beyond the gatekeepers? And then once you do actually have an initial conversation with them, then what do you prepare so that there are things that, what I call leave behinds, so that way they can learn about more and understand more about how you can help. And then how do you continue to stay connected? Because have you ever had doctors who've referred maybe like once or twice, or maybe just once, every blue moon, or maybe once a month, and you wish, oh gosh, I'm helping their patients so much. Why don't they refer more? And there are a couple of the key things to think about. Is in order for you to get more referrals from doctors, this is it might look really simple, and its simplicity is also very powerful. And because it works if you think about it this way. So in order to get more referrals from doctors, think about what are the top 3 reasons why you may not be getting as many referrals as you'd like. So I want you to think about perhaps one doctor that you have gotten referrals from and you'd like more referrals from, or one doctor you would like to get referrals from and you haven't yet. And I want you to think of that specific person. And I want you to think about, so I want you to draw a triangle on your sheet of paper. What is their level of trust in you as a practitioner? So if they feel like, and also as a person too, if they feel like your approach works and, oh yes, studies, back this and everything like that, but they don't have that personal connection with you, they're probably not going to refer as much. Because just think about the people you refer to the most, or the people you're the most connected with and help the most. It's probably people you enjoy or you like more. Isn't that true? So, so I want you to put on a scale of 0 to 10 right now. Like, where are you at on the spectrum 0 to 10 with this particular doctor you would like to get in more with, or get in with at all, or have more referrals coming from? Another is the second thing to look at, rate yourself on scale to 0 to 10, is their trust in your modality, and not just your modality, but also how your modality can help with perhaps different kinds of health issues that you could really help their patients with. And specifically also as it relates to safety and efficacy. Because if they're concerned about safety and efficacy, they are not going to refer. They're really concerned about things like lawsuits and also clinically that they're recommending something that they're concerned that their patients might come back to and say, this is not good, right? So I want you to rate yourself 0 to 10. How well are you doing with educating them on your modality, your approach on safety, efficacy, and understanding? Then the third area to look at on a scale of 0 to 10 is, what about top of mind awareness? Because even if they feel like this, they know that your approach works, they also like you, but you're not top of mind awareness for them, they're going to forget about you. And because why do drug companies spend so much money sending drug reps to doctors' offices? Why do you think that is? Because it costs them a lot of money to do that all the time. Because there's always been proven prescription writing increases, a spike in it whenever a drug rep goes in the office. I know this because I was behind the scenes. I had worked at behind the scenes in a drug company before, right? So I saw actually the numbers in that company. And so, so think about how can you be top of mind awareness on a scale of 0 to 10. What you want is the doctors to be at a point where they're seeing patients during the day and they think, ding, 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 ding. Such and such person told me like this. In this situation, I can refer, right? So, so as far as, let's see here, let me just say, in terms of getting your foot in the door. So there are a couple of hot tips about getting your foot in the door. One thing is during these times. For example, one of my clients was doing this during when a lot of places were still closed, a lot of practices were still closed, collaborating with MDs who do COVID-19 testing. And why would you want to connect with MDs to do this? That way you could say, I'm looking for a good I'm looking for MD that I could refer my patients to if the need arises, right? So because maybe some of your patients might need testing. Another thing in terms of getting your foot in the door right now that's working really well for a client. I had a client of mine I helped with this, and it's gotten her in, which is to actually do, because you might be thinking, well, I can't stop by their office or anything. I don't have that kind of time right now, or maybe they don't have that time right now, or I don't want to go out because such and such. So what can you do? So this is something that I had one of my clients do, and it worked really well, is to actually create a short video, a 2 to 4 minute, a 2 to 4 minute video. And I'll share that with you in a moment here. Okay. So the other, what I was going to mention is a 2 to 4 minute video that would, I'm sorry, not 2 to 4 minutes, actually ideally even just 2.5 minutes, because the shorter the better for the doctor. But it included some like a key kind of a question that the presentation addressed, and then it ended essentially with encouraging referrals. And so then that was a way, because doctors are busy, they can actually, so what she did and what I suggested she do was that then she would say, okay, here's this, I made this for you. I was thinking about you. I made this for you. And watch it during lunch today or something like that. Right. So that way it makes it easier for them to actually consume it versus you trying to get a hold of them and because they're busy. Another way to get your foot in the door is to look at getting introduced in through a mutual patient. For example, this is a script from a consistent patients formula, step 3 of getting the phone ring, about, well, what do you actually say to get in with doctors? And I'll give you what it says, also part of it as well, so you can use it right away. And actually, this is good. I asked my assistant to include this in a download. I just told her just about an hour before a call that I wanted to add this to what you all get as well with the download. So as far as, let me give you the link there again. So as far as why through a mutual patient of yours is because you already have that relationship. Because can you think of a patient you had who had good results working with you? And do you actually know, do they actually have a doctor, a medical doctor, or it can be other practitioners too. You could be getting referrals from other practitioners as well. It doesn't have to be just medical doctors. So then but what do you say to them to get their attention? And one thing you can do is say something like this: I'd love to hear more about your practice. I'm looking for a good such and such provider to send my patients to when the need arises. What kind of patients do you enjoy seeing, or what's your practice philosophy or approach? Many of my patients will need such and such practitioner, right? Some people ask me for recommendations. So that's another way to approach it as well. So when you actually have a comfortable way of approaching that way and then start up the conversation, then you can look at how can you educate. Oh, and by the way, to make it easier for you, if you have a cell phone, you could also text Now Open. So NOW open, Now Open, and to get the templates if that's easier for you. So then step 2 is educate, right? And this is what I was talking about earlier in terms of what do you do when MDs are busy. So you can send them studies periodically. You could just send them a link saying, I was thinking about you. This will be helpful. This is when I was reading this. It's and then write a quick summary of it and then bring it up. And then you can also mention something about how your patients are getting good results with it. Oh, text now open to a number. You just unveiled, Sharon, for me that I don't own a cell phone, right? Because my assistant just wrote me something about texting that. I didn't even think about what number to text it to. So let me just have a quick look here. Okay, I've got it now. I didn't even think about how you need to text to a number. Okay, here's the number to text to. So text Now Open to 623-777-2139. So 623-777-2139 if it's easier for you to get the templates. And then you text Now Open, NOWOPEN. Okay, so then you could you could include studies and then mention something about how your patients have been doing really well with it lately. You've been treating your patients and they're getting pretty good outcomes with such and such situation. So just ways, this is again another way to remind them, or send that video like I mentioned to you, short 2 or 3 minute video. Okay, and then I also want to share, because we just talked about a second strategy, which is about MD referrals, but let's talk about a third strategy here coming up in terms of that and we'll finish up with this third strategy of what's something that can help you that's working right now in terms of marketing strategy that is working right now in this climate. So, these are just some of our clients. So, for example, for Jaquel, she used to connect with MDs, but she wouldn't really get very many referrals. But then after we worked on this, she got referrals simply just because of having a system in place that worked, right? So it's really just about knowing how to approach it, and it's just so nice to not have to, just like with what Tracy was bringing up earlier, having a practice that is primarily through referrals, and especially during these times. So a third marketing strategy that is working well right now is what? What do you think it is? It's to educate people online. And by the way, Tracy has been putting in some good tips there too in the chat, so you're welcome to check that out as well. So about getting doctor referrals. So strategy number 3 is educating people online. And why is this going to be a very important strategy for you moving forward? Because more people are checking things out online. And if you want more telehealth bookings, it's going to help you book more telehealth appointments also. And then if, for example, Olivia, she's a client of ours. She's actually also the American Society of Acupuncturists board member. And she was feeling really grateful because she actually had things set up before this COVID-19. She ended up transitioning to a full telehealth practice already prior to COVID. So this whole thing was smooth. But in terms of even if you're newer to telehealth, what I'm going to talk about here can help. Also, if you want to be bringing another stream of income separately from seeing patients one-on-one in person, there are different ways to do that. Like, for example, Joshua, she's actually, so she's an acupuncturist and she was practicing in a few different locations and it was wearing her out. And this was right around the COVID, like right before the COVID-19 time. She was just about to go and consolidate more and be in one practice, and was her goal. And then really just settle in on, okay, I'm going to make this thing work. Right. And then this whole COVID thing happened. And then we looked at adapting to this whole thing. And then she ended up offering things, even like she offered, this is back in let's see, was it March or early April? Sometime around then. I think it might have been early April. She offered someone to work with her. It was more through consulting, kind of like coaching kind of things. And doing that and someone took her up on a $1,500 package working with her that way. Right. There are other ways to work with people. Also, for example, can you offer group classes or workshops, and of course, is allowable if you're allowed to your state and profession. So group classes, workshops, whether it's virtual, like, for example, there's a health coach who offered a gut rebuilding program, and it was 5 weeks, and it was. So her main deal was helping people with gut rebuilding, but she also believed that people needed to detox before gut rebuilding. So she did a 5-week detox thing. And then she also charged separately for her own line of supplements that supported the detox. And she charged $197 for that. And then after that, she offered a gut rebuilding program that was $997. And by the way, she had like over 150 people in the first one, right? And then in the gut rebuilding one, $997, she had like 100 people in that one. And so, and that one, I was a part of both, by the way. And and people enjoyed it in terms of found it helpful. And you could also look at doing things that might be either for patients or other providers. So patients or for other providers. And because have you figured something out? Whether it's clinically or maybe it's business practice wise that, and actually one area of opportunity, remember how I mentioned to you trends for you to look out for in terms of, we talked about IT sector might be more proof, right? Coronavirus proof. Another thing is that I see in trends is that because practitioners, not just acupuncturists, but other kinds of practitioners, other health practitioners, other holistic practitioners might be interested in doing things more virtually. If you have figured out something with your telehealth that has worked well, including even what happens in a telehealth visit flow. What do you do with a patient in the beginning of it? How do you make it helpful? How do you communicate with them before the telehealth visit? How do you communicate with them after the visit? If you've got that figured out, that could be something you could teach other practitioners too. So then other potential streams of income, whether it's online courses that's more automated. So I have a client of mine who is an acupuncturist, and she texted me pretty early on in this COVID thing, and she said, I'm so glad we got this in place last year. So she helps people with fertility, and she said, because this is very, very early on in COVID, she's like, nobody can come in or all that, and I'm so glad people can still benefit from my teachings and through my online course, and then membership or kinds of things. So you could even look at setting things up that involve membership online or supplements. Are there supplements that you feel it can benefit your patients, or not just your patients, but also lay public as well? And could you actually private label them? Have you ever thought about that? Because why would you want to private label? Because sometimes people get things from Amazon, and did you know that there are things out there, even the companies, the supplement companies that manufacture it know this, that there's a lot of counterfeit out there on Amazon, right? So it's actually safer to be able to order something that you've vetted. And so those are some things in terms of other streams of income you can also look at. So back to this topic though, when I said educating online you can end up bringing in more patients into the practice by educating online. You can also be getting people interested. For example, Sharon's asking how to best market these programs and get people to purchase. You could do that best with educating people online as well. But what doesn't work so well is ads or just social media posts. Because like I talked about before, because more competition. Also, how many times does it take for you to actually start trusting in someone when you've just seen them fleetingly through some post? Well, and yet sometimes, and I'm guilty of this at times too, right? So yet sometimes when we post, we just think, yay, they're going to like this right now. And then they're going to take us up on what we have to offer and that kind of thing. So one thing that can help you though is to do something that each of these practitioners have in common. Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Josh Axe, Dr. Alan Christensen, what do they have in common? They all are successful in their holistic businesses. They all have things going online, offer things online. For example, Dr. Josh Axe has supplements online, but he also has things like webinar courses. And Dr. Alan Christensen, New York Times bestselling author, naturopathic doctor, he has online. I mean, he has his own private labeling online. He also has a practice in person, but he also has which other practitioners are part of, and he's just mainly the figurehead nowadays with it. But he also has things like more online kinds of things. But what do they have in common? How are they marketing things? One thing they all have in common is speaking. They speak to educate online. They don't just send out million emails and then that's it, right? They still are educating and speaking. And one common mistake I see many practitioners make, especially as they're wanting to get in the online world of, okay, I'm going to offer my online course, or I want to offer a group program online, is following practitioners like these and thinking, oh, that's what they're doing now. So because I see them send out emails and then they have people sign up for their programs, and then follow that, right? That's a mistake that I often see. But then the point I'm trying to make here though is that they're in a different stage also though of business. And how did they start out initially when they first signed up, their first person or the first people for their online courses or online kinds of offerings? It was through speaking. In fact, I have a client of mine who used to see Dr. Josh Axe, and he would verify that, right? Like as a clinician. So in terms of if you're solo practitioners, we can focus on if we have to choose. So let's talk about this. So these are some of the things that are working right now. You could be speaking more online, for example, interviews. I just had because you know how we talked about even medical doctors, if you're wondering, well, how do I get a hold of these medical doctors when they're busy and they don't want to talk to me? Well, you could look at interviewing them. And why would they want to be interviewed? Because it gives them extra visibility, and they're automatically feeling like they're in place of an expert when you're interviewing them. So interviewing other practitioners, having other practitioners interview you also. For example, I had an acupuncturist client of mine who she felt like this medical doctor was referring a lot of his patients to other acupuncturists in the area, even though he knew about her. So we talked about this, and then she actually did a Facebook Live interview of this medical doctor. And guess what happened? She ended up getting 7 referrals from that medical doctor that week. And partly because, for one, he ended up being more, and she ended up being more in his forefront, of awareness. And another, when you're naturally interviewing someone, you get to talk about things. So naturally, she had a chance to talk to him more, right? And remember how I showed you the triangle, the top of mind awareness? So that ended up being there. You can look at, but you can also get interviewed And then you can have other practitioners interview you and look for opportunities like that. for example, those are some of the things that I've been helping my clients get in with, different interview opportunities like that. Also Facebook Live. So, and then webinars. For example, remember Cheng I told you about earlier? She's been getting 10 new patients a month the last couple of months. And what has she been doing that's working? So she's been doing a combination of Facebook Lives, using the structures I've been giving her. Because it's one thing to just educate. It's another to also be getting bookings from it, right? So a combination of Facebook Lives that educate, and also there's some interviews involved too. And then there's also Facebook posts that engage as well. So that is one strategy that is working well. And then also through webinars, educating people in different platforms and their different organizations. For example, I've had clients recently do webinars in front of churches. And I had another client of mine do a webinar in front of an LGBT organization, right? So, I mean, this is a large audience. So if you think that you have to be like, not really sure about what to do, like you can be sure if you knew what you were doing, right? And it doesn't have to take up a lot of time, even if you might feel like you're nervous or don't want to be on camera. You don't actually have to be on camera, by the way. And if you're nervous, you just need to get one thing in place. That's it. The one thing standing between where you're at right now, and then getting your passion and what you're doing up to hundreds and even tens of thousands of people, is just one signature talk that converts. And when you have this one talk that converts, in terms of one talk that not only educates, but also inspires people to take that next step with you, whether it's booking appointments, whether it's taking you up on your online programs or courses or other streams of income, then you've got it, right? And you can adapt it to different situations, interviews, Facebook Lives, and other kinds of things. And so, a couple of hot tips as we wrap up here. One thing is that, a challenge might be, well, where to get booked? So one of the most common mistakes I see a lot of acupuncturists make is go straight into, let me get booked, without paying attention to the first step. That's why if you've tried to get booked, whether it was in person before, maybe you're trying to get webinar opportunities or interview opportunities or things like that, it's not happening. You're not hearing back, right? Or people aren't showing up if you try to host them yourself. It's because of skipping over the first step. So, for example, what is part of the first step is, what is the right angle of a topic for you to talk about? Is it really aligned with how you can help people? And what is the best title also for it, right? For example, these kinds of titles. And I know I've included other kinds of professions because it's sometimes easier to see when it's not your own profession. Is this something are these kinds of titles where you feel like you would actually get excited about and show up for, right? Or are they just kind of interesting? So one of the challenges is it doesn't address a $1,000 problem, and doesn't address an urgent, expensive, pervasive problem. So if you can start to gear your topic more around that, then you're going to get more people interested in showing up. That's just one consideration. The other thing is then also your talk designed in such a way that actually gets people coming in. So this, again, I'm showing you of chiropractors because it's a different profession, and sometimes it's easier to see in other professions than yourself, right? So, for example, if you were to attend a talk and all they talked about is subluxation this, subluxation that, right? Then people get lost. So if you talk about spleen chi deficiencies and you're talking about that a lot, those kinds of terms, or using words like high vitality or MTHFR and all these kinds of things that we all understand, then you're going to lose people. So how can you have your talk be engaging? How can you have it be interesting and compelling, and also inspiring people to take a next step with you? Because it's one thing to just be educational; it's one thing to also inspire new patients or clients to come from it. So, and how do you do that in a way that's not salesy? So, also coming up with an offer that makes sense, and that would be a no-brainer too for whoever it is that you're talking to. So today. And by the way, all this is, it's just about having structures and systems. Like our clients aren't any special, like compared to you all, right? Like our clients who have been having busy practices are like Chen, 10 new patients a month. It's like, well, what is she doing? Well, they're not any more special than you. It's just about having structures and systems in place that are working. And also what's right for your practice, because each of you have different goals and desires, and also desires for a lifestyle too. Right. So it's not about following other people's, what idea of success or anything like that. It's about following your heart with your own passion and success. And so you learned today some low-hanging fruit to book more appointments. You've also learned some predictions of how COVID-19 can affect practices coming up here, and that way you can stay ahead of the curve. Right? Part of this is about staying ahead of the curve. And we also talked about some specific marketing strategies that work in this climate, which include getting in with doctor referrals, and then also that's under tapped right now, right? And yet my clients who are doing that, it's like they have busy practices right now. Same thing with speaking, right? You learned about how that can be actually. Even if this were to happen in the fall, one thing you still have is your mouth. Would you say that's true? Right? You can always educate people. You can always educate with all the knowledge in your head. And then we talked about strategic planning for now in terms of some key things to think about now, and then also 5 critical keys to bring in more patients, whether it's in person or telehealth. We talked about how most acupuncturists go straight to get the phone ring, which is the 3rd step, instead of paying attention to the first 2 steps. The first 2 steps have to do with uncovering what your uniqueness factor is and communicating it so people get it. That was important before COVID-19. It's become even more important now than before because of the shift in economic climate, right? And then we talked about, should you lower your fees or not? And the next thing for you is to really look at for yourself. Do you actually have a plan? Do you have systems that you can plug into and that are working for you? And if you don't, then get it figured out, right? And so what I decided to do for those of you who would like further guidance with this, also with, or just downloading the templates, is to give you access to those templates that I promised you. So I'll put the link in the chat again to make it easy for you. And then, this is the number to text to, and then now open. I'll type in the chat here. We're going to go to that link, which I'll pop in the chat here briefly for you. Also, for those of you who want to get insight into what's most frustrating in your practice right now, and what are some key areas of opportunity for you that we're seeing for you, then happy to do that. You'll have a chat with me and or one of my team members who's an acupuncturist as well, who's had her own successful practice. Then feel free to book in with me or her for a double my practice strategy session and see how we can help you further. With that, I am really proud of you for sticking it through, because you're showing up here because you made it. You made it through riding the wave. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here, right? And you're also really, really committed, and that's why you're here, because you're staying here till the end. And so I just wanted to honor your commitment and in terms of congratulate you for that, and continue to be out there and waking up the planet, because people need you, and there's so much that acupuncture and Chinese medicine can really help with, and you are the vessel for things shifting with our healthcare system, and with even the emotional things that have come up for people. Would you say that's true? Really helping our society in this time, and when we come out of this and the other side of it completely, right, we're going to look back and we're going to think, wow, this actually was a blessing on different levels, even if we may not see it right now. And for now, take good care of yourselves and take good care of your practice and take good care of yourself personally and financially, spiritually and professionally. And, you don't need to do this alone either. So get the help if you feel like, okay, I need the help and happy to help you. So Thanks for having me here today, Lauren.
Thank you very much, Chen. And thank you guys, like she said, for showing up. And, when you have a practice management class, some people are intimidated by them or turned off by them. And as you can see, the people I bring, I'm looking for integrity. It's not about filling your practice. It's about being of service to other people. You have something that can benefit them, and how to communicate so they know that you're there, so they show up for you at your clinic so you can change their lives. And then the end result is you have a busy practice, you have abundance, but you're doing it for the right reason and you're doing it with integrity. So Chen, thanks for sharing this information. She's giving you some call to action, as in she gave you some options of how to reach out to Chen and get some of these scripts information. So use that website or that text message. And again, that's the offer. So if you can see her formula, right, she's educated you. She's giving you lots of pearls. And then if you want more, she's giving you some other stuff to connect with her. And that's the same thing that you do with your patients. You educate them, you give them pearls, but you got to have an offer. If you just educate them, then they're like, thanks for the education, but they don't have a follow-up with you. And she's giving you an opportunity to continue to connect with her. So Chen, thank you for a great talk. Thanks for your integrity, and thanks for modeling how to educate without really selling, just educating and then giving them an opportunity, that offer. And so well done. For everybody that's shown up, again, thank you guys for coming to this webinar. Do check out healthyseminars.com/resources. You can see both our free lectures as well as our CEU approved live webinars are upcoming. We're always adding them. We got a new series starting, what I wish I included in my textbook, which I think is going to be fun because so many authors have written books and now they're like, oh, I wish I put this in there, but now they have a chance without having to go through a second edition of their book. They can do it via webinar. And just keep coming back. We love our community. Remember, recordings stay up for 48 hours because we want you here and we want you to watch the content. And so we're going hard and fast on that policy again because we went relaxed and then people got, like I do, you get, I don't know if you call it lazy, but you're like, it's there. I'll finally get to it. I'll get to it. And all the intentions are there and I keep leaving it. And the free stuff that I subscribe to that gives me 24 hours, they give 24. I'm giving you 48 hour. I watch it. I find the time. I stay up late. I get up early. I make time for it. The ones that don't give me that restriction, with all the best intentions, I don't watch it. So I know some of you aren't going to like it, but I want community. I want you here live with us. And I actually want you to watch this content because it's to your benefit. And so that's our policy. Again, we're going back to the 48-hour rule. So you got 48 hours to review this again, and all our other live webinars that are free, you got 48 hours to enjoy those. Again, check out in your chat for Chen to follow up with her. Her website's The Introverted Visionary, and she has that link. The introvertedvisionary.com/healthy will take you where you can connect more with her and get some of these scripts. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Chen. Much appreciated.